I used to be the person who never had friends, who could barely form acquaintances in real life, no matter how hard I tried. I felt locked in my introversion, like there was an invisible barrier keeping me on the outside of every group. Then one day, I became interested in social skills and started reading books like How to Win Friends and Influence People and How to Talk to Anyone. I also watched a bunch of videos about social interaction, but guess what? None of it helped. I didn't understand why until I started studying psychology and focusing on human behavior. That's when I realized that much of what society tells us about being more social, like keep eye contact, repeat the other person's name, nod and smile, is way too superficial. It sounds good in theory, but in practice, it barely moves the needle if our mindset and core behavior are off. For me, the real issue was my personality and how I presented myself to the world. Once I understood that, having charisma and getting people to like me suddenly became a lot easier. And that's exactly what I want to share with you here, because if you watch this until the end and apply what we talk about, you'll see people around you start to respond differently. They may not know why, but they'll be drawn to you. So, welcome to the second episode of this social skills series. Today, let's talk about charisma. In a nutshell, there are three ingredients: presence, warmth, and power, which all need to work together. If they get out of balance, that's when things go wrong and you end up feeling frustrated or fake. Let's dive in by looking at presence. There's a famous anecdote from 1886 about two politicians running for election in the UK. Near the end of the campaign, a journalist was asked her opinion of both candidates. She said something like, "The first person makes me feel he's the strongest person in the UK, but the second person makes me feel I am the strongest person in the UK." Ultimately, that second politician won. The takeaway here is that you don't build charisma by showing off your strength. You build it by helping other people feel their value. The fastest way to do that is by being truly present. Presence means focusing on what someone's saying while they're talking, rather than plotting your next move. If you're thinking, let me ask him about his weekend or comment on his shirt, you're not listening. Sure, we could get into typical tips, make more eye contact, tilt your head, and ask good questions. But let's cut to the core. When somebody else speaks, just listen. That's it. Don't stress over what you'll say when they stop. Don't worry that you'll look blank or boring. Trust me, ideas come more naturally when you're genuinely hearing the other person out. Interestingly, some social psychologists have observed this effect in group therapy sessions. When a participant lets go of the urge to plan and focuses on what the other person says, the sense of connection skyrockets. One friend of mine tried this approach in everyday life, and within a week, she was already seeing people warm up to her more than before. She told me it was like people sensed her presence. Even though she didn't say anything particularly clever, she just listened, and they picked up on that. Now, part of being present is also being comfortable in your skin. If you're anxious about your posture or worried about looking silly, you're not really in the moment. And when you aren't comfortable, it makes the other person uncomfortable too, because they pick up on your tension. Being comfortable means you're allowed to sneeze, yawn, shift your seat. Basic human stuff. You don't hold yourself like a statue. You don't overthink every gesture. When you loosen up, people around you loosen up as well, almost like you're permitting them to be human too. It's naturally attractive. Okay, so that's presence. Next up is warmth, which you can think of as genuine kindness and empathy. This part often gets mistaken for being an over-the-top nice person, the kind who agrees with everything and hands out empty compliments. That's not what we want. True warmth means connecting from the heart, genuinely curious about people, and seeing their good qualities. If you're not careful, you can fall into phoniness, smiling too eagerly, nodding too often, or giving generic praise that doesn't match what you feel. A huge part of warmth is understanding that people communicate with way more than words. Research in psychology often cites that only about 7% of our communication is in actual words, and the rest is in tone, body language, and other nonverbal cues. You might have heard that statistic before. Maybe it's not perfectly exact in every scenario, but it shows just how much feelings and vibes matter. If you're secretly bored or annoyed, but you're forcing a polite face, the other person might not know exactly what's off, but they'll sense something isn't genuine. On the flip side, if you truly feel excited to talk to them, that's going to radiate through your expressions and voice without you even trying. So, what if you meet someone who's super passionate about a topic you don't like? Say, they're going on and on about football and it just bores you. Don't pretend you love football if you don't. Be honest. Hey, I've never been into it, but I'm curious. What do you like about it? That's a warm approach because you're acknowledging your differences while still inviting them to share. You're not insulting their interest. or pretending to share it. You're showing basic respect for their enthusiasm. Warmth also means giving value in small ways. If a friend mentions they're looking for a new apartment and you know a good website for rentals, casually share it. Don't pester them to follow up later, just offer it. That's genuine kindness. No strings attached. But presence and warmth alone don't complete the charisma puzzle. The final piece is power. Power is that quiet confidence that says you don't need to beg for approval because you trust in yourself. It's not about overpowering someone with loudness or making them feel small. It's the opposite. It's having such a solid sense of who you are that you don't feel threatened by other people. You're not afraid to set boundaries or disagree politely. You can say, "No, thanks, I don't drink," without feeling the need to justify it for half an hour. You can calmly tell the restaurant staff, "I found a hair in my dish," without cringing in embarrassment. Power is about respecting yourself enough to stand up for your principles and everyday preferences, and doing so with self-assured grace. If you're new to feeling a sense of power, you might have to start with small steps. Let's say you're at a get-together and someone's pushing you to eat something you can't stand. Instead of caving, just politely decline. They might tease or question you, but stand your ground. Do it calmly, not as a big confrontation. This might sound tiny, but every time you uphold a boundary, you teach yourself that your comfort and opinions matter. Over time, those little moments pile up and you feel a growing reservoir of self-respect. Body language can reinforce that feeling. Whenever you feel yourself slumping or shrinking, do a quick check. Relax your shoulders, maybe take a slower breath. Social psychologist Amy Cuddy famously spoke about how power posing can help shift your mindset, at least in the short term. It's not a magic bullet, but an open, unguarded posture can give you that small burst of confidence to keep practicing these skills. It goes hand in hand with being comfortable. If your body is free and open, your mind often follows, which helps you express presence, warmth, and power more naturally. Let's bring this all together with a real-life example that ties in presence, warmth, and power in one go. Think of a friend of mine who used to be terrified of making phone calls at her job. She'd get sweaty palms, her voice would shake, and her mind would go blank. She told me that she realized she was so focused on sounding professional that she was never really hearing the person on the other end. The minute she decided to relax, actually listen and respond with genuine empathy, co-workers started noticing something different in her tone. She also stopped constantly apologizing and started asking direct questions if she needed clarity. That was her stepping into her own power. Within a few weeks, her boss complimented her phone manner, saying it sounded so reassuring and warm. Looking back, she said it was all about balancing those three elements: paying real attention, presence, caring about the caller's issue, warmth, and not being afraid to be direct or ask for what she needed, power. All of a sudden, things fell into place. That's the vibe we're aiming for. It's that feeling of being relaxed but engaged, kind but not clingy, confident but not arrogant. If you miss one element, you can tilt into awkwardness. Too much warmth without power might make you seem like a pushover who's always saying yes. Too much power without warmth can come across as cold or intimidating. And if you're missing presence, you'll never form that real connection. The big question now is, how do you apply these factors so that you actually see a change in your life? My advice is to focus on them bit by bit. If you realize your biggest issue is presence, start there. Whenever you talk to someone, even for a minute, decide that you're going to keep your mind from wandering off. If you catch yourself drifting, gently bring your attention back to what they're saying. If you think warmth is your weakness because you tend to be closed off or suspicious, try a small mental shift. Assume good in the person you're talking to, at least initially. Show real curiosity in what they have to say and see how that changes your vibe. Or if power is the missing piece, pick small situations to practice being assertive. Maybe it's politely declining an invite when you're exhausted, or finally telling a coworker that you need them to follow the correct procedure before you can proceed with your part of a project. This might feel weird at first. You'll slip up, revert to old habits, or second guess yourself. That's normal. Real change is a process, and it takes time for new behaviors to feel natural. But if you keep at it, you'll start noticing subtle shifts in how people react to you. They might lean in more when you talk, or they'll seek you out in a group. The day someone comments, "I love talking to you, you're so easy to be around," is the day you realize how much progress you've made. You might also notice that loneliness starts to fade. If you've been stuck feeling isolated, balancing presence, warmth, and power can open the door to genuine friendships. People won't merely see you as that quiet person in the corner or the one who doesn't contribute. They'll recognize your confidence and your willingness to listen. This leads to deeper conversations, more invitations, and a sense that you finally have a place among others. Rejection also becomes less scary, because when you respect yourself, you don't feel personally crushed if someone doesn't vibe with you. You're standing firmly on your own 2 feet. At this point, you might be wondering how to handle tough moments, like if someone tries to walk all over you or they're outright rude. That's where a mix of warmth and power is key. You can remain polite, yet not cave into their behavior. Set a boundary. Let them know calmly that what they're doing isn't okay. It might ruffle feathers, but it will preserve your sense of self-respect. And ironically, some people will admire you more for it, because you're showing real backbone without being hostile. That's a rare quality. Remember, if you only remember one thing, remember the synergy. Presence, warmth, and power feed into each other. Presence stops you from zoning out and helps the other person feel valued. Warmth builds trust and connection. Power ensures you don't lose your identity in social situations. Get all 3 working together, and you won't have to memorize lines or constantly debate how to stand or what to do with your hands. You'll click into a natural, authentic flow that others can sense right away. It might feel like magic from their perspective, but for you, it'll just feel right. In practical terms, that could mean you're having a casual chat about someone's vacation plans. You show presence by truly listening, no phone in hand, no wandering eyes. You display warmth by asking them what part of the trip they're most excited about, or if there's something special they want to try. Then if they ask you a question you're not comfortable answering, or if they invite you along but you really can't go, you exercise power by politely declining or telling them your boundaries without making it a big deal. You stay genuine and respectful. They leave the conversation feeling respected, heard, and curious to know more about you next time. It's not rocket science, but it does take a willingness to break old habits. You might realize how often you used to check your phone mid-conversation, or how frequently you'd agree to things you didn't want to do just to keep the peace. As you practice, those old habits start to fade, replaced by a more centered approach that treats you and others better. This can ripple out into your entire life, whether it's forging deeper friendships, chatting with strangers more comfortably, or even stepping up at work and letting your ideas be heard. When people sense your charisma, they feel safer and more open around you, and you in turn feel more confident. It becomes a virtuous cycle. Before we wrap up, I want to emphasize that charisma benefits you in every corner of life, not just social gatherings. It can help you collaborate more effectively at work, negotiate better, and create stronger personal relationships. This doesn't mean you become a different person. It means you unlock parts of yourself that may have been buried under layers of fear or overthinking. When you show up with a genuine presence, a true sense of warmth, and that quiet inner power, people can't help but take notice. So if you feel anxious or shy or think you're just not cool enough, hear me out. Nobody's doomed. The tips about make more eye contact are okay for the final polish, but the real shift comes from rethinking how you listen, how you empathize, and how you stand up for yourself. That's where the real magic lies, and it's exactly what I discovered on my journey. It wasn't about memorizing lines or forcing a fake smile. It was about changing the way I showed up in every interaction, relaxed, interested, and unapologetically myself. As we close, remember that this is just one part of our social skills series. We've talked about self-confidence before, and we'll dive into more topics soon. Everything connects, so if you want to go even deeper, check out the other videos in this series. The payoff is huge. You'll feel better about who you are, and the people around you will pick up on that authenticity. It's a win-win. Thanks for sticking around. Now please don't just switch off and forget all this. Put it into practice. The next time you talk to someone, whether it's a friend, a co-worker, or even a stranger at the store, try to be fully present for at least a few seconds. Show genuine warmth if you can, and hold on to your personal boundaries and confidence gently. Watch how they respond. It may be subtle at first, but over time you'll notice that people are more drawn to you, more curious about you, and more eager to keep the conversation going. That's the real power of charisma. It makes you magnetic while you stay true to who you are. No hype, no gimmicks, just the raw impact of presence, warmth, and power working together. Try it out and let me know how it goes. You might be amazed at how quickly things start to shift when you start showing up as your best, most genuine self. Stay tuned for the next episode in this series and take care of yourselves until then. And that's it, the full picture of charisma. Remember, presence to truly hear people, warmth to connect on a human level, and power to hold on to who you are without bending to external pressures. When you get this balance right, you'll find that people can't help but be drawn to you.